Guys, thank you for tuning in. You are watching another episode of the Win and Play podcast. I am your host, Sean Gary, national youth speaker and author of Ricardo's Race and Ricardo's Race, the activity booklet, amongst some other topics as well. I got at least another book or two. But anyway, so you guys are tuning in at a perfect time. This is an amazing day that we have before us today. It's beautiful. It's sunny outside. I'm so excited to be alive today. And we have an awesome guest that we have before you today. But as we always do on the Win and Play podcast, before we introduce our guests, we get right to our rings. So what we typically do on the Win and Play podcast, because we are getting these win and plays from our amazing guests. The win and plays are for the principals, the teachers, the parents, to help them serve their students better, serve each other even better. And so to give those winning plays in sports, basically, you're trying to win a championship. You're running those plays, running the plays the coaches are designing up and trying to, win the game, ultimately win a championship, and then get your ring. So what we do on the show is we eat a ring pop. So my guest already has hers. You say you have yours, right?
Got it right here.
I'm going to pick mine out. Ooh, strawberry lemon. This one says tropicals. This pack was tropicals. Strawberry watermelon splash. I think I'm going to rock with that one today. Let's go.
Got strawberry over here, Sean.
I was going to ask, which one did you have?
Yep, it's just plain strawberry. It's not splash, but I bet it's still good.
All right. Well, I need to get Ring Pop to do like a sponsorship or something for me, because we've been rocking these Ring Pops on all these episodes. All right. Strawberry watermelon splash. Not bad. Okay. So you guys are about to meet this awesome young lady, a sister of mine, awesome husband, family. I don't want to get too much into it. I'm going to let her speak for herself. But guys, welcome Tiana to the show, to the podcast. If you are watching right now, put in the chat, welcome, welcome, welcome. All right. So can you tell us, first and foremost, thank you for being with us. I'm going to be looking up and down like at the camera and at the screen here. Can you tell us, what I like to ask first is, what got you in teaching, like as a teacher now, but what was there something that happened early in life that drew you to teaching, where you say, you know what, I really want to teach, I want to be with young people? What is that? Is there something that happened for you?
So I only teach on Sundays in ministry.
You just cut out a little bit.
Sunday school.
You just cut out a little bit.
Can you hear me now?
Go ahead. Yeah.
So for me, I don't have a full-time teaching position. I just teach within our church, in our community at our church. But what drew me to teaching, I started helping out as a teenager because I actually wanted to learn more about the Bible. So whatever you're teaching about, you have to know about. Absolutely. So I just started helping teach class so I could hear the other teachers talk more about what they were teaching these children. And from that moment on, it was over. I loved what I was learning. I loved pouring that back into children. Kids are a blank slate whenever they're born. So everything we pour into them, they're absorbing. Absolutely. And so it's so important. And I always feel so privileged to be able to teach them on Sundays during Sunday school time.
Nice. That's cool. And then, so not only do you do some teaching on Sundays, but you also are a parent and you have children yourself, and at least one is in school right now, little Millie. So can you tell us, from a parent's perspective, what was it like preparing her for school? Because she's going into first grade, right?
Yeah, so she's going into first grade. So preparing her for kindergarten was a little scary. I'm not gonna dropping your babies off with somebody that you don't know what their day's gonna be. And so Millie had went to preschool, and it was really rough. She went for 2 years. Her first year was really rough. You know how they all say, like, oh, just leave and it'll get better. They'll eventually just start walking in. She did not do that. So up until the last week of school, she was still clinging to my leg, mommy, mommy, and then now
Wow.
we're off. Yes. So come our second year of preschool, we had just this God sent teacher. Um, her name was Miss Ginger Doty, and she was amazing for Millie. Millie loved her. We still communicate with her. She's a great family friend now. And she really impacted Millie to start trusting other people besides just me or her dad. And she felt safe with her. So we had 1 year that went bad. We had 1 year that went fantastic. So now we're in kindergarten, and it's like, okay, it's a whole new school, a whole new ball game. Which way is it going to go?
Right.
And so I remember we were taking her the first day, and James, my husband, took off work that morning so we could take her together. And I thought she was gonna cry, and I was like, "What are we gonna do if she cries? I know she's gonna be upset." And he was like, "It'll be fine. It'll be fine." Girl didn't cry. I was the one crying. I was bawling and didn't want to see her. She was so excited to go. And then I had like made her lunch her first week every day, and I was driving her to school. By the second week, she was like, "Mom, I don't want my lunch made. I want to eat at school." And Mom, I want to ride the bus. I was like,
Wow.
"Oh."
Yeah. Growing
Yes,
up.
yes, yes. So preparing her for school was hard because I didn't know what to expect. So, sending your child in there without knowing who they're going to be spending their day with for 8
Right.
hours a day, it's kind of a scary, overwhelming feeling,
Sure.
because people are impactful. Like I said, children are that blank slate, so they're absorbing everything.
Right.
Thankfully, she goes to a school that you've been to before, and it's a wonderful school, and her teacher assistant was actually one of her great friends within our church, so it was just a wonderful school year, and now she's ready. But preparing, it's a lot of praying, it's a lot of talking, encouraging, but also being strong, because again, that first day she's ready, but I wasn't.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Let me ask you this. What do you feel like were the top maybe one or two concerns that you had, like just thinking like, man, I'm getting ready to send my child away for the day. Like what do you think was the most that caused you the most concern?
Her innocence. So Millie, I don't want to say I've sheltered her, but I haven't exposed her to a lot.
Right.
And so there's some kids that are exposed to a whole lot, and there's all the way from language to TV shows they're watching,
Absolutely.
the music they're listening to. And for me, I've always, some would call it strict. We don't look at it as strict. I just monitor everything.
Yeah, that's good.
So for going, she might have been at preschool for 2.5 hours a day, but from going from that short to 8 hours a day, mama has to step back. I'm not in control of what she's being exposed to, and that innocence in
Yeah,
her.
yeah,
Um, she really just hadn't been exposed to much, and I didn't know. I was too scared. Like, our kids, is she going to take things offensive and get upset a lot, or tell her what they just seen on TV? You don't know going in what
right,
other
right,
kids um is normal for them that may not be normal for us. And as well as teachers, like I said, we were blessed with amazing teachers at her school, but even still going in blindly, you don't know how those teachers as well, because you don't know them. And
right.
so it's scary. It's like passing your child off, they're their parent away from you essentially. So it's scary.
Oh yeah, man, for sure, for sure. I know with our kids, it was like for a while, I guess it seemed like maybe they were kind of the outcast, in a sense, like in a way, like they were unaware of some of the things that the other kids were speaking of, like the popular shows, the popular this and that, and you know,
Absolutely.
we're in it, not of it, right? So it's like we don't necessarily get, deep into certain things, but we can still hear about it. You know what I mean? And I think when they were younger, they would sometimes ask like, well, who is this or what's that? And we wanted to try to always, even to this day, I try to make sure that especially my daughter, well, all of them, my sons too, like I want to make sure they understand communication with me is always going to be an open door. You're always going to have it. Like I try to explain to him, like, I love you so much. Like you're going to mess up. You're going to make some
Yeah,
decisions. You're going to be like, oh man, I blew it. I blew it bad. And I
absolutely.
feel like a lot of students, a lot of young people, they don't feel like, I'm not going to say they do or don't have it, but they, I think, feel like they don't have somebody they could actually go talk to and ask for help and say like, hey, I'm in this situation. Man, this happened and I chose this option or I chose that option. And it puts them in a space where it's like they got to figure it out, right? Like, dang, what do I do versus saying, let me call dad, let me call mom, auntie, uncle, who's been there, who's made it very, very, very clear they're waiting for this call. Like, there's going to be some times where
Yeah,
I'm going to mess up. And they said, call me. So I try to do that with the kids so that they know, we have our lines open now, but when that time comes, don't feel like, oh, I got to figure this out on my own. Nope. I'm going to love you through it. It's nothing you're going to be able to do that's going to change my love, because that's probably the piece. We're going to judge them or look at them different or whatever. It's like, no, we all make mistakes, but call me so I can help you through it.
yes,
Because I feel like when we try to, figure it out on our own, we end up making things worse, right? It's like,
absolutely. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Like I've never been here before. What do I do? Like, oh, maybe it's that. And it's like, no, don't press that button. It's
Yes,
like, don't press that button. Oh, maybe I should press this button. But
yes,
but I say that to say I totally understand, where you're coming from. It's like your kids are gonna come home saying things and you're like, man, where did they get that from? Or you know exactly where they got it from school, and sometimes you have to navigate. We didn't really teach on why that's bad. We just didn't really mess with that. But now they're bringing it to the table. It's like, okay, now let's have another conversation. This is why we don't watch that show, or this is why we don't, listen to that music, or whatever the case may be. Have you had any opportunities where Millie has done that? Like she brought something home, or she said something, or questioned something, or just you're like you're listening to your daughter, like, wait, this is not my daughter. Like, where is this coming from?
yes.
Have you seen
Absolutely.
anything like that?
Absolutely. We have experienced situations like that a lot this first year,
Mm,
a whole
wow.
lot. Millie's also a kid that over analyzes things, and I know there are kids that do that. But at the same time, I hate to say overanalyze because it's great to be aware though.
Mhm.
And so
Are your students lacking confidence? How's their decision making in the school? What about their effort in the classroom? Are they giving it all that they really, really have? Well, these are things that, as a national youth speaker and author, I address in school buildings. If you are dealing with any of these issues and you would like to have a fun, exciting, full of energy presentation, assembly, don't hesitate to reach out. My website is SeanGary.com. How they think about their next choices will be different. Go ahead and book a discovery call with me, which we simply have a conversation about what their challenges are, what their needs are, and then I can share with you what I would say, do, what talks that I have that address those areas, and also what an assembly would look like. And yes, I'm pretty much there the whole day. All right, thanks a lot. Now back to the episode.
Millie in our home, there's only certain things she can watch. We don't listen to music with curse words or profanity. And so at school, even in kindergarten, we have learned there are all kinds of kids with like TikToks even, and they're on mom and dad's
Crazy.
phones and stuff. So she came home one day and was
Uh-oh.
like, Mom, I want on TikTok. And I'm like, girl,
She said,
you're
what?
not
What did
getting
she say? You had cut out for a second.
she said, I want to get on TikTok. And I was like, no, like, sis, we're not getting on TikTok. And this was within the first couple weeks of school. And she was like, well, Mom, my friends, they do dances on TikTok and I want to do dances on TikTok too.
Mhm.
And I was like, no, we can play music and dance in the living room. I'll record you if you want to watch it on my phone, but we're not posting you on TikTok and you're not scrolling on TikTok.
Yeah, we can
And
play some music in the living room and you can dance.
yeah, like we'll have a whole
I
dance
like
party,
it.
but we're not getting on TikTok.
I like
So,
it. And
so
I can record
um,
you on my phone.
yes. Yes, exactly. I'll let you play it back, but we're not posting nothing on TikTok.
Right.
So her response though, because I wasn't expecting my 6-year-old just in her first few weeks at school to start to gain her own thoughts the way that she did as far as a reflection of others. So she says, but mom, all my friends are. And so right there, I was like, wow, like, okay, this is already starting. I didn't expect this to happen so soon. So
Yep.
I was like, the classic saying, well, if your friends jumped off a bridge, are you going to jump off a bridge? Like that's what I wanted to say. But I also remember I was thinking about that though. And I have amazing parents, but I remember my parents used to say that to me all the time. And I would just be like, oh, here they go again. Like, obviously I'm not going to jump off a bridge, So as you said, the communication, I sat her down and I explained to her, some parents, they're okay with those things. For me, though, my eyes are a little bit wider open and mommy wants to keep you safe. And sometimes when you're scrolling on things like that, there might be things that aren't made for kids to see on there. And this is why, because I'm protecting you, because I love you. We'll reassess in a few years, but as of right now, absolutely not.
Yeah.
And kids aren't going to be always happy with that answer. But as you said, the communication, and whenever you were saying communication, we are really big in our home about talking about everything. I mean, my kids will tell me every detail of everything, where sometimes I'm like, ugh, but I mean, I want them to,
Right.
And so, yes, you want your kids to come and talk to you though. And so Millie went through this phase this year too, where she started coming up with thoughts and opinions. And she we had to go through this period where she was telling me every thought that popped in her head.
Okay.
So, I'll tell you what I mean. So one day she's like, comes to me and her daddy and she's crying hysterically. And I'm like, what is wrong? Did something happen? What are you doing? And she had just been playing in a room by herself and she just is sobbing. And I'm like, what is wrong? Like, Millie, calm down, talk to me. She's like, Mommy, you're going to be so mad at me. You're going to be so mad at me. And I'm like, why? And she's like, I can't even believe I'm going to say this. She says, well, Mommy, sometimes whenever you wake up in the morning, your breath stinks and I don't think you're pretty. And that thought's in my head a lot. And so I was like, okay, well.
The level of innocence, right? Like,
yes.
oh my
So
gosh.
I was like, I wanted to be like, girl, what did you say? But I was like, okay, well, while I do encourage you to tell me everything, I brush my teeth and then I'll be, you can just keep that opinion to yourself. And she's like, but you said no secrets. And I'm like, exactly. I did say no secrets, but that's your own thought. Like, you can keep that. Like, if you don't have nothing nice to say, you don't have to say it though at the same time. So we went through this period of her though, like learning, okay, what is a secret and what is like, something that's in my head that's not wrong of me. I mean, if she thinks that, whatever, but like, that's not wrong of me. To have my own thought, because I'm allowed to be myself, but I also don't need to keep things that my parents need to know. So we went through a really odd and very trying stage with her of her own thoughts getting in her head. And her thinking, she wasn't nice if she had an unfavoring opinion, or one time she had said, Mom, this kid at school said a really bad word. And I was like, oh. And so I'm like, okay, did you tell your teacher? And she's like, yeah, I took her out to the hallway and I told her, this kid said a bad word. And I was like, well, and I was so like careful to do this, but I was like, well, what did he say?
Right.
Yeah. What did he say? And he's like, yeah. She's like, Mom, he said that something was stupid. And I'm like,
oh my gosh. I love Millie. I love her so much. She's so innocent.
So, yes, that's what I'm saying right there, the innocence.
Yeah.
So that was why it was such a transitional period for us.
Yeah.
because she was so innocent and child-minded, which I want her to keep as long as she can, because we all know when you grow up,
Right.
like the world's so heavy. So I'm like, I
And
want
go
to keep
backwards.
her innocent. Yes, I want to keep her innocence as long as I can. And
Yeah.
she, like I said, we've restricted a lot of what she absorbs. So then it was like explaining, people are different though. You have to do what is right that is right, what God puts on your heart, Millie, and how God tells us to be. And you are Milliana, you're not so and so over here, so you are accountable for your actions,
Right.
and me and daddy are responsible for watching what you're doing. That's our job, but the communication all goes hand in hand. She was able to come tell me, her teachers, whoever, so
That's so,
yes, like
he said
yeah, so
stupid.
yes, so very like, and there was so many situations like that, but very like, they don't have a rule book for parents, so it's like, whoa, like I need a book, like how do I help my kid when they have these thoughts? Like there is
Right.
no rule
Right.
book, so it was just navigating day by day. And I finally think we've gotten past that point. But when she went to school, it was just a change of environment for her.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Nah, that's wild because you got to think every parent's different, every household's different. So you got to imagine there are these households where the parents don't monitor anything. And
Yes.
so not only, so watch this though, like not only do those students pick up the phones, the parents may give them the phone and let the phone parent them. So now the kid is on social media, multiple streaming platforms, multiple social media sites, and so they're receiving all this content that they have no business receiving. They have
Yes.
no filter. Then there is no explanation as to what they're even receiving. So they're putting everything in banks in their head, how they sort it out and how they're putting what's important and important, what's not important, what's real, what's not real, what's
Yes.
someone's opinion versus what's fact, all these things they're navigating on their own, creating them as a person. And then, right, so that's the impact from like internally, like their home, their parents are giving them all this stuff. So then they get to come to school, right? And then they're pouring and spewing all this stuff out, so wrong, so bad, so miscalculated, misquoted, everything is just coming out, information, random just stuff. And then on the opposite side, you have the same individual who's receiving from school stuff and taking it back home, but still just putting it in wherever they want to put it in their brain. And there's no
Yes.
parent at home that can say, well, at school, this was what was really good. This was what was really bad. This is what, because you got to think they may get something on their own from home or on their parents' phones, thinking something is good, go to school. It's really bad, but they go to school spewing this bad thing as a good thing. And then when someone presents good information, they put it in the bad bank, like, oh, I'm not even gonna listen to that. That's terrible stuff.
Yes.
And it's really probably something good for them to hear, or good for them to capture, good for them to apply for themselves. But they don't have anybody at home they can take it back and dissect it with, like, hey, this is what somebody said at school, and for the parent to say, oh, that's good, that's really good information. So they just dismiss it like, oh, no, I'm not, that doesn't match with the information that I've been getting on my own that no one's been able to say is bad information. And it's like, it's just a cycle over and over again of just bad, I'll say, what you could say, parenting or development, the
Yes.
kids developing
Yes.
on their own.
Yes.
And then the kids at the school, they're receiving all the stuff from that kid. And it's like,
Yes.
you're a kindergartner, but you're thinking and being exposed to sixth grade information and lifestyle stuff that you shouldn't have no business hearing for some years from now. That's crazy. What do you think about that?
Oh, I agree. And I think that all goes back to like those scary things whenever you're sending your kid to school, because you don't know what your child's going to hear, and you're not there in that moment to say, hey, like, come over here. Like, I don't want you listening to this, you know? Right. So you really have to start at home and teach your child, like, hey, if you hear people talking about this, walk away or say like, hey guys, we shouldn't really be talking about this. And so, you know, there's nothing that we can do as parents to protect kids that aren't ours from what exposure they might be receiving at home. Right. But we have to take initiative with our own kids to make sure we're having those conversations like, hey, this isn't cool. This isn't what is acceptable for you as a child. So if you hear people talking about this, depending on what it is, you might need to go bad, but it's not something that we agree with. It's having that conversation even at the age of 6. Right. What is okay and what's not. And I don't curse. And I never have in front of my children. And my daughter, whenever she like started going around other children, and this actually was in preschool, she came home and said a cuss word and had no clue though, no idea that it was bad, like was just talking. And I think she was like singing a song. That's what it was. She was singing a song that had it in it. And it was Easter Sunday. And I was like taking our family picture, and she's just sitting over by the car, like singing this song, and it says this cuss word, and her dad look, and we're like, what did she just say? And so we ask her, and she like just tells it to us. She's like, what do you mean? I said this. And we're like, what? You know, like, what did you say? And so I'm like, okay, well, how does she know if we don't cuss, where we're not telling her, you know, like, oh, and we don't expose her to shows, how is she going to know? So as a mom, and this sounds so crazy, but it was the only thing I could think of to do. I took her and I sat her down, and I just told her cuss words. And I was like, we don't say this word. We don't say this. This is bad. I didn't explain what they meant at all, but I let her know, like, you don't hear them, but you're going to hear them from people that aren't us. And it's going to be made acceptable, like in a song, like it's nothing. Right. And so I've never had a problem since then. She was 5, I think, at the time. And it was so, talk about like an awkward moment. Like that's so, I don't even cuss. And here I am like to my 5-year-old saying like these cuss words that you don't say. Beware. Yeah. These words. But I was like, I opened my eyes, like she's not around that. So if she hears somebody say that, she doesn't know that it's a bad thing, like you just said. So I had to take that moment with her father to be like, these are things you don't say. And we have some family that say, you know, have a different selection of language than what we do. And, you know, like we have to speak up sometimes, like, hey guys, like our kids are around, you know, as an adult, you can't control what other people are going to do, and you can remove yourself from the situation, but your children, you know, you have to be very cautious with their ears. So you know, there's times where like, hey guys, but in that moment it really hit me, like she has no clue. Like kids can go up to her, say anything they want, and she'll repeat it because she does not know that those are a bad word. And in that case it was a song. Right. So, you know, it's more of, so it's more of a conversation that like, it's bad. The world is so bad right now with mainstream media and TV and commercials, even on TV, like the YouTube ads or anything, you know. It is so scary out there right now. And I have learned, like, I'm not going to be able to shelter my kids from it all. I can't protect them from it all. So then there are those awkward conversations you have to have with your kids. Of course, I don't want to tell them too much because, again, that innocence thing, but at least borderline, like, hey, we don't do this. This is why. So that they at least know, because otherwise, like you said, they're not going to know, and it's going to be normal and it's going to be good. And I'm going to be sitting here thinking, like, I watch everything you do at home. Like, how did you learn this? And
I'm sorry. I'm visualizing like Millie in like one of those little, like the cars that are for kids where they got the little pedal on there and they could press and then it'll go forward or whatever. I'm visualizing her like in this like Jeep, you know, with cornrows and like driving sideways and just kind of like arm hanging out the window, rolling up and just like rapping some crazy super secular song and just like swearing in it and not knowing what she said and like looking at you and James like, what up? Like,
Yeah, like I'm not doing nothing wrong. Like, what are you doing,
right,
Mom?
rolling up
Yes.
like, praise the Lord, like.
Yes. I mean, that's what it was. She's just over there chilling, like singing this song, and we're like, "What are you
Right,
doing?"
has
Like,
no idea,
what? It's
no idea,
Resurrection Sunday. What did you just say?
no
Like,
idea. You know what though? There are songs that I've listened to years ago where someone will, post online like, oh, remember this? Oh, this was my hit or something. And I'll look at it like, oh yeah, I remember that was dope. Like, and then I'll listen to the lyrics like, ooh, like I was listening to that in middle school, like, or I was listening to that in
yeah,
elementary school. Like, that's crazy.
yes,
Like, I didn't even know what that was. I didn't even know what half this stuff meant, like the R&B songs and stuff. And it's like you're as a kid singing, and it's like you don't even know what that means. You gonna do this and that to a woman, and you don't know what you're saying. No
yeah,
idea what you're talking about. And you just singing all as loud as you can at the top of your lungs,
yes,
Crazy, crazy.
yes,
Let me ask
yes,
you this. Let me ask you this. So teaching in the church,
yes.
what are some of the challenges that you have faced when dealing with some of the students, some of the youth in the church?
Um, Again, exposure because even in the church,
Mhm.
um, things that I see like as a red flag, like with my own children, like I would never do this. I have kids, come up in the church, sweetest kids in the world, but they'll be like, hey, can we play that new Taylor Swift song? And I'm like, no, Sunday school, like we're gonna listen to our worship music, and they're like, why? Like I want to play it. And it is really, and I've even had like conversations with parents later, like, hey, they were upset with me because we wanted to play this song or do something secular.
Right,
And to kids, it's all innocent fun. So then sometimes
right.
I look like the bad guy because I'm like, this is the one place though that my kids go to different programs that I don't teach. There's a rotation for teachers. It's the one place I want to trust though that's not secular.
Right.
So it's hard even here. Like if a kid goes to school, okay, for example, like a public school, and they're talking about Taylor Swift, like there's nothing to, okay, they're talking about Taylor Swift, but whenever, and I'm not targeting Taylor Swift, I'm just saying, but
I
um,
am. No, I'm just playing. No, go ahead. Go
um,
ahead.
but if they come to Sunday school class, I have to monitor the children in a loving way and bring it back to Jesus because I don't want somebody taking with them, bad blood lyrics or whatever it is, and going home and their mom saying, what'd you learn about Jesus? And they're like, oh, we learned about bad blood with Taylor Swift because of conversations with other kids.
Mhm.
And they're all innocent. That's the sad thing. Like they're so innocent in it all. Um, but I would also say too with the kids, it's hard. For instance, today, sometimes it's hard knowing how every home functions because for me, I'm just all about Jesus. Like I don't go into the religion aspects of it all. Like we're just learning about Jesus, we're learning about God, and like right now we're on fruits of the spirit. Well, just today, I had a student that like had fell on our carpet and got like a little rug burn on his knee, and he was like, "Ow, my boo boo hurts." And
Yeah.
one of the kids was like, "Let's pray for him." And so I was like, "Yeah, guys, like that's a great idea. Let's pray.
Let's go.
Let's pray for him right now." While he starts crying and he's like, I don't know what that is. And I was like, oh,
Oh,
okay. And so I scared him. And I was like,
like pray for
and it
me.
was just,
What you mean? What you mean? Pray
I
for me.
know, yes, yes. And it was just like a short, like, dear
Wow.
God, please help his boo boo feel better. Thank you for his healing. Amen. But it terrified him. And
Wow.
so I could immediately tell, like, okay, like his family's very, I would assume, I guess I should immediately tell, but he's very new to this. So and like Jesus is all about love, and to me, if somebody prays for me, that's the ultimate gift of love they can ever give me, is a
Yeah.
prayer. Like, thank you, how much higher of a gift could I ever receive?
Right.
Lord. But to that child, he's like, what are these people doing? You know, like praying, like, what do they mean? I said, I got a boo-boo. Like, what are you doing? Yes. So like sometimes, you know, you have to understand that where one child may not be with their knowledge of God and Jesus and how they are as a Christian and their family, another child may know absolutely nothing.
Right.
And so it's foreign language when they come in. So we always try to instill, I always say I want the kids to have fun. So we try to do lots of games, we'll try to do crafts, but making sure we're incorporating lessons into it that whenever like a lot of games I try to do demonstrations with it. Like today was all about peace, so we played a game about not breaking up peace, and we made it a lot of fun with an activity. But I try to bring it all back, you know, at the end, like, okay, this is why, you know, we receive Jesus in our hearts because he gives us peace, so we don't have situations that end up broken like this did. But you have to be very, very careful not to scare a child or to overwhelm a child because some of them, they don't know anything.
Yeah, I don't know. What an opportunity though, you know, to educate him in that space on prayer when he's like, wait, pray? What do you mean? I don't want you to pray for me. Like to be able to break that down, you know, and be able to him walk away knowing what prayer is, right? Like from walking in, like, pray, we got to give our thoughts on prayer. I don't know what that is, to walking out like, hey, I prayed today and I'm gonna probably be trying to pray more often. You know, how cool is that as well?
Yes.
All right. So this has been great. This has been awesome. Here we are leading up to our moment of truth. We have our win and play segment coming up. And before we get to that, I want to ask you this question. What is the biggest bomb, the biggest mistake, dropped ball that you have ever made teaching at the church? Like, what's the biggest thing you're just like, oh man, I blew that one, like, or I ain't never doing that again, or that didn't go the way I wanted it to go? What's something that you can think of that, you know, you're just like, oops?
Yeah. So this plays into Sunday school, but it went home with me because it was with my daughter. And we were talking over Adam and Eve. Okay. Most anybody that's a Christian knows the story of Adam and Eve. Eve ate the apple, you know. And we leave there, and I could tell my daughter's face. Other children, you know, they're like, yeah, Eve ate the apple. She shouldn't, you know, they're going with it. But I can tell my daughter's face is kind of like, what are you doing? And like her face is like upset. So we leave, and I ask her later, I'm like, are you okay? And she's like, yeah. And I'm like, are you sure? And she's like, yeah, mom, but sometimes I think that devil tells me to do things. And I'm like, well, what do you mean? And she's like, well, he's made me cut my hair before and I didn't tell you. He's made me throw a toy away before and I didn't tell you. He's made me hit my brother and I ran and I didn't tell you. She just starts telling everything. So I don't know how much of a bomb it was, but we had to do a lot. She overanalyzed everything then. Like, I mean, it was probably 2 weeks worth of her just telling us everything she's ever done. And so I was like, well, maybe I didn't wrap that story up as well as I should have. That she feels she needs to tell me everything she's ever done. But I guess she learned something out of it.
Yeah, I think that even in that, it's still like really cool that I think what she got from that was the devil, his influence and his persuasion and trying to, you know, get us to do things we not supposed to be doing. And that conviction was there. She's just like, oh man, wow, all these things that I've done. Like she's like thinking of specific moments where, you know, and it's interesting because going into her future after that moment, she's going to be more conscientious of her thoughts and what's coming in and what choices she's making and all of that. And now she had something to weigh it on, like, wait, maybe this is one of those moments where the enemy is trying to persuade me to do something like that. Man, that whole thing can preach. So I'm gonna pause it right there. But that's really, really cool. All right. So the moment of truth. So the win and play on the show, on the podcast, we always end with option A or option B. So option A is principals, parents, and teachers. You give 3 winning plays for each one. So that's 9 winning plays for each one. So 3 each, 9 total. Or option B, you choose one of them, principals or parents or teachers, and you give 5 winning plays for just them. So which option would you like to choose, A or B?
I'm going to go with A.
A. All right, so 3 each. All right, principals, let's start with the principals. What are the 3 winning plays you have for them?
I would say connecting with families, not just children. I would say making sure that your face is seen and that people know who is the principal, not just on paper. And also making sure that while I know it has to be so heavy, the weight of an entire school on you, maybe going back to your roots and always remember why you started with your passion of what brought you there.
And for some, that might be money. No, I'm just playing. I'm just playing. No, I'm playing. All right. So that's 3 for the principals. All right. What you got for we're going to finish with parents last. What do you have for the teachers?
For the teachers, again, connecting with families. I think it's so important for parents to know who their children are going to be spending their days with. And that also builds a trust with the child whenever they know that there's a trust with their parent, with that teacher. 2, I would say have fun. I know our teachers have always been wonderful, and my daughter always tells me how much fun she has. I think if the fun's out of it, those kids aren't receptive to learning, and they're not taking anything with them because they want to have fun too.
Yeah.
But 3, teachers are amazing. They're doing such a wonderful job, and they have so much carried on them, and making sure that again they're remembering why they started, but making sure that they have maybe somebody to always a partner with them, like to always touch base with. I know for me in Sunday school, I have my little group of people that we bring the situations to, and we say, hey, what would you do? To have those people to lean on and communicate with too.
Right. And then sometimes to vent to, like,
yes, exactly. Yes.
Kid over here, boy, he was just chewing on my ankle, and I was like, get off me.
Right. Yes, to have your people. Yes.
No, that's cool. All right. Last but not least, the parents. What do you have for parents? 3 winning plays for parents.
Yes. Okay. Demonstrate what you tell your kids. So if you're telling your kids be nice to others, don't be gossiping, say please and thank you, make sure you're demonstrating that to your children from you, because children learn by what they're taught and what they see.
That's good.
Also I would say monitoring. I know it's so easy to give a screen to our kids and have that free babysitter while we're doing whatever we want, but monitor your kids, monitor their programs, limit their screen time. I always tell my kids whenever they get upset, whenever I'm like, all right, it's time to get off your tablets, I'm like, one day you're going to thank me, because whenever you're older and you're thinking of memories as a kid, you're not going to think of what you watched on a screen. You're going to think of playing or doing a puzzle or whatever. So I would say definitely monitoring and make your kids get off their screens.
That's good.
And lastly, affirmations. Every single morning,
Powerful.
I have all of my kids, all 3 of them, say affirmations about themselves, and they have to do it separate, and they have to say they're pretty, they're kind, they're full of God's love, they're smart. And sometimes I'll be like, okay, guys, do your affirmations. And they'll be like, I'm kind, I'm smart. And I'm like, no, you better believe this. Like, that is not, it's not just to say it while we're doing it.
Right.
We're saying it because we believe it. And I'm like, be nice to yourself. And I tell them every single day, you be nice to yourself, and you be nice to do one nice thing for one person today. And so I think just making sure your children know their self-worth, but not just from you, from their own perspective, is so important.
Yeah, man, that's good. That's really, really good. Man, you dropped some nuggets today. We had some good laughs. God bless little Millie, man. I love her, man. She's sweet as a little
She
girl.
loves Sean Gary.
That's what's up. Yeah, you got to make sure you tell her I said what's up.
I
Yeah, it was funny. You were saying something earlier about her and just how her brain thinks. And there's a video of her and I online where I was interviewing her. Actually, James was the one recording at the time, but we were at the church and I had asked her, I was talking to her about me being at the school, and I said to her, do you think I asked her a question and I used the word beneficial. And she like was looking and she said, "What does that mean? What does that word, you know?" And I was just like, "Wow, that is so cool that she was comfortable enough in herself and confident in who she was to say, you know what? I don't know what that is. Let me ask." Versus
Yes.
like, well, I don't know what that is, but I'm gonna act like I do. You know what I mean? 'Cause
Right. Yes. Yes.
a lot of times we do that, like we act like we know something and we really don't, and then it makes the situation worse because we respond to something in a way that we shouldn't have responded. If we knew what that word was, we wouldn't have responded that way, but we acted like we knew, so then we made a bad decision, and then it just turned into something worse, and it's like now you're out here faking, not confident in who you are, and just self-esteem and all that. So that's a shout out to you guys as parents, to put that, building her self-esteem and that confidence in her to where she's like, you know what, I don't know what that means. Let me just ask. My parents probably taught me if I don't know, ask, versus just trying to
Yeah.
make up something.
Yes.
And it was just
Yes.
so cute when she said it. I was just like, oh my gosh, yeah. You're talking to a kid who it isn't even in first grade yet, and you're like, what does that mean?
Yes. Beneficial.
So that was super cool. That was super cool. All right,
I
before
love
we go, any last words or anything you want to share with anybody watching, any viewers, or any tips or anything else you want to share about anything?
I would just like to thank you, Sean. You have been such a light in our lives, shedding so much light and focus on direction that all parents, teachers can all take information of. And we really enjoy listening to you. And you have just been so beneficial in our lives and beneficial. And so we're,
So
we're
beneficial.
very grateful for you.
That's funny. No, I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that big time. This podcast is something that, and I know maybe you're not just talking about the podcast, but the podcast is something that, the Lord told me to do. And I was like, okay, cool, let's do it.
Yes.
So I'm grateful that people have responded, in the ways that they have. And if you are watching right now and you haven't already liked and subscribed, make sure you like and subscribe. But also, if you are a parent, a principal, a teacher, or a youth advocate, you work with students in some form or another, some capacity, please, if you have information that you want to share, reach out to me, reach out so we can get you out here on the show, on the podcast, so we can have your content, your information be shared with everybody else. And also, don't be afraid to comment on the shows, on the videos, in the comments below. So whether it's this one or another episode, if you hear something, you see something that's going to help somebody else, please add your thoughts in the comment section so you can still be helping students, even though you're not the person on the actual show that day, the actual podcast. So please add your comments, like, subscribe, share with others so that they can also be a part of the Winning Squad, and tune in to the Win and Play podcast with Sean Gary. So that's all I have. Did you have anything else?
I do not. I do not.
Awesome. All right. So that's all we have for today. It's your boy, Sean Gary, and I'm out. Peace.